I have special privilege today because I know all the people who are presenting. They've been here before, and we're going to start, as you know, with the hospice person, Carol Lynn Branna. Carol Lynn is a native of South Carolina. She joined Lutheran Hospice in 2011, and she's been with us before here for other programs that we've done. She's going to help us understand the role that hospice plays as we plan for our last days and our last wishes. She will explain the 5 wishes, which I think is one of the most wonderful things that has ever been created for people who want to plan ahead and have some peace of mind as the time gets close. Carol Lynn is a graduate of USC, and before her involvement with hospice, she had organized the Be Well Home Services in the upstate. Carol Lynn, come on up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, June. Ooh, go Cox. How about those Gamecocks this weekend? I appreciate y'all letting me come today. As June said, I've done a lot of different programs at Rolling Green and have been very privileged to. I love this community and the people here. And what we're talking about today, as June mentioned, are the 5 wishes. Are any of you familiar with the 5 wishes? Have you seen that? A few of you have? Absolutely. It is actually America's most popular advanced directive way of planning. It was developed by Jim Towery. This national document was developed about 12 years ago. Mr. Towery, who I actually called there today and spoke with him a little bit, worked with Mother Teresa, and he was inspired to do this advanced directive piece that is now accepted in almost all the states in the United States. It is definitely, as you will see on page 3, accepted in South Carolina, and which is a good thing for us because it doesn't just address the normal things that advanced directives address. It also it addresses dignified end of life and how you want what you want, and that's what this discussion is for. If you see this handout, this is what Lutheran Hospice, who I'm the director of, this is what we focus on, because we actually participate every year in National Advanced Directives Week. And so we go out and do this program all across the state of South Carolina with these 5 wishes booklets. And it's learn about the options for end-of-life services and care, organize and complete your plans to ensure wishes are honored, voice decisions to family, friends, and healthcare providers, and engage in personal or community efforts to improve end-of-life care. And these directives are for anyone 18 and older. So anyone, no matter what age. I have them myself. Wendy does at the back. I know we were talking about that a little bit earlier. And one thing, I've had a lot happen to me personally, obviously professionally being the director of Lutheran Hospice, I deal with end-of-life every day. But I've had a lot personally happen with me over the last couple of weeks. I had 2 of my very close friends that passed away, and both of these men were in their 40s. And it was sudden and it was shocking. And it really brings that, when we say love, it's what it is. It is love. Making these decisions and putting down so your loved one doesn't have to think about it is a gift. It is a gift you give your family. These women, these men, their wives and their children, unfortunately, were having to struggle with this huge thing that had happened to them, and they also had to figure out what he would want, because in the 40s, I never got to them. I feel kind of bad. If they had not made these decisions, they hadn't had the conversation. And that's what this is all about. It doesn't matter, what your age is, having that conversation. It's not just, for us. It's for our loved ones. It's for our family, our spouses, our friends, whomever that we have, our children. Because they don't have to do it. They just get to be the children. They don't have to make these decisions or think about what you might want. And that's basically the entire premise of this. We're going to go over this, bit by bit. I'll have questions at the end, but if you have any while we're going, just ask me. We're going to do this really informally. As you see, the first wish is the person that you want to make your health care decisions for me if you can't make them yourself. And you put that person's name here. You're unable to make your own health care decisions. That could be because God forbid, but you could end up in a coma, or you could end up where you can't speak, you could end up where my grandmother had dementia, and she would not, I'll be honest with you, I tried to talk to her, and when, she would give me the, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it, I want to talk about honey. And so being family, it's hard to push your family, so I never did. So we really didn't know, and so we had to kind of guess at everything. And what it created was, even in my family who loved each other, they all love each other a lot, but it created some animosity between my mom and her sister, because my mom, she's got her own thoughts, and then the sister had a different, and we were the out-of-towners, and so we didn't know, and so there was a lot of things that came up, and so I really regret that I didn't do that with my grandmother, but I didn't push her enough just because it was a little bit uncomfortable. So I would say, push yourselves. If you haven't made this decision, if you have friends, if you're even your kids, me and my husband did ours, push them, but so they don't, because once it's done and you have the conversation, you made your copies and give it to them, you can move on, and everyone, it's like a little bit of a weight that you didn't even know was there is lifted. So that is the first thing to think about, is who you want that person to be. And also to have a second and third choice if you can. And those, because anything could happen, if it's a spouse, you could end up divorced, something could happen to them, or they themselves could become incapacitated. The person needs to be 18 years or older in South Carolina. And there are certain people that it cannot be, and that is usually someone who could profit from it, to be honest. That's kind of the gist of the whole thing. It is a protection thing to someone who could profit from it. You would not want to make your health care agent. And so it's usually choices, people that, they know what you want, and they have you in mind. And as you see over here, these choices they can make choices about your medical care, tests, surgery, things like that. Interpret instructions that you give here. They can consent to going to assisted living, hospice, a nursing home, a hospice house. They can make decisions to take away or give medical treatments. They can approve your release of medical records. Be it in healthcare, that is one of the first things we'll do. If someone wants to talk about hospice, we will have their healthcare power of attorney sign off on them so we can get their information and look to see if they're appropriate. They also may be able to move you to another state if that is the way that it needs to go. Like if you needed a Medicaid bed, they didn't have one in South Carolina and you needed to go to North Carolina. They can also refuse medication or any procedures, take legal action for you, donate any usable organs, and do applications for you for assistance like Medicare, Medicaid, or other programs, and then anything you list down here. And this is the most important part to all this, because this is a lot of stuff they can do. If you're not comfortable with them doing any of this, you just exit out. And that is perfectly legal, and that's what they say. You just cross it out. And it's okay, because you may be more comfortable with them doing some things and not others. So look at that and decide. You may not want them to be able to take any legal action to carry out your wishes. Whatever that it is that you're not comfortable with. This is about your decisions and what makes you feel good and what you feel comfortable with. So you can do that. You can change that. If you decide to change your person, if something happens, honestly, if something happens to them, you get mad at them, or you find out there's somebody else that may be better at it, you can always do that. What you do is you destroy it. And you can write the word revoked on any of your copies, and it is revoked. The second wish is, it is the medical treatment. What kind of medical treatment that you want or don't want. What I hear a lot in hospice is I don't want to be in pain. That is, I think, obviously the number one thing that people think. And when I was listening to, I listened to a lot of DVDs to get the information to present today, and one of them said, and I believe it's true, a lot of healthcare providers are very good at cure, not necessarily good at care. They want to cure you. Hospice is a little different because all we're focusing on is how you feel. But a lot of other healthcare is just curing, and that's what they're taught. Doctors and nurses, they go to school to cure, to learn that. We're all learning in this age that at some point, you don't cure everything. Sometimes you just care. And so that is really what this boils down to. It may be that you are taking a lot of pain medicine at the end. I'm going to tell you a story right now, and I will not mention anyone's name. On my way over here, we had a family that we're working with, and they have 3 lovely siblings involved, and they are arguing because one of them, the son, he thinks that the other 2 want, to make mama sleep all the time. Well, and that's what he feels like. You're just doping her up, to be honest with you. And the other 2 feel like, well, she's in pain, so it's okay if she sleeps. She's comfortable. She feels good. So they are at each other because of this, and it's so sad to see. Because it's not that any love her any more or any less. They all just love her. They all just have their own perspective of mama and their own perspective of care and what it is. So right here, you can put this right here. I do not want to be in pain. I want my doctor to give me enough medicine to relieve my pain, even if that means I will be drowsy or sleep more than I would otherwise. That's okay. Sleep is good sometimes. I really like it myself. And so you may, maybe I'll be at that point. And if you are in pain, you do want to sleep because you want to feel good and be comfortable. And it's okay. And this right here would have relieved this argument and this son's anxiety and animosity that he feels twisting in him. Because they, ma'am, I'm sorry, on page 6. Okay. On page 6 with wish 2. So I think that is a lot of what people struggle with. Do they, we've honestly had people say, get them up and make them walk. They can walk. Wendy back there used to be a hospice CNA with us, and families would say, make them walk, and she's like, oh, they don't want to. That's not where they are right now, and it's okay. And that's what this is all about, is really letting that family know that it's okay once they get there. And then life support treatment. And this is all up to you, because everyone has a different perspective of life support and what it is. And so right here, you can spell out, what it is to you, what it means. It could be just a personal thing. It could be a spiritual reason. And over here, it says if you're close to death, you can check it if you want to just make it easy. I want to have life support. I want everything that can be done possible, and that is okay. I do not want life support if it's been started to stop. And the third thing is I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it could help. But I want my doctor to stop giving me life support treatment if it is not helping my health condition or symptoms. In other words, if it's not going to make them better, then they don't want it. But you can choose any of those, and it's okay, no matter which one. You've made the decision. Family doesn't have to think about it. They just open up their coffee, and it's right there. And then it goes into more permanent and severe brain damage if you are not expected to recover, and if you are in a coma, and in another condition under which I do not wish to be kept alive. So if it's an end-stage condition, if your health has gotten worse, and you don't want these things to keep you alive, if you feel like it's your time. And it talks about here about a DNR. Have any of you heard of a DNR, do not resuscitate? That is an official order from a physician. So it is not in here, but it is talked about, because do not resuscitate, your doctor has to sign off on that. Or if you were in skilled, Rolling Green or whatever, then the medical directors, a doctor has to sign off on it. One question that I get all the time in hospice is, do you have to have a DNR, do not resuscitate order, to be in hospice? No, you don't. You do not. You do not have to. Everyone is at a different point. And so you can make that decision. But for that, you do have to have an order from a doctor. Yes, ma'am.
Do you need do not resuscitate when you go in an ambulance? Is their first line to resuscitate you?
Yes, they do. Yes, ma'am.
You need to have it with you.
Yes.
If you don't have it with you,
they have to resuscitate. They do.
So make sure that somebody knows.
And that's why we put them up in the homes when we're in there. And I will tell you, it's fine to be on your refrigerator, but that's not going to do it. If that ain't, unless somebody jerks it off and runs to the bedroom with it, you have. We put it on the on the end of their bed. You can tape it up there. That's where I tell them to put them, because you don't want them to have to think about it. Just like your family, you want them to know. But otherwise, it is their medical responsibility to cure, not to care. Again, that is sort of the way that we look at that. So I always put it at the end of the bed. On your refrigerator isn't going to do any good unless there's someone there to show it to them, right in their face. So, but do get that through your doctor and get that signed off on that order. Okay, then the next wish on page 8 is wish 3. Now, wishes 3, 4, and 5 are what makes this a little bit different than your regular advanced directive, because these are more about comfort. These are the things that that you say particular that are to you. Like, how do you want to be comfortable? You can go into, you want to have music played, while you're there. You want to have, your lips moistened and cool and warm baths or whatever makes you, feel good. Everyone is a little different. I've seen a lot of different things, and even in hospice, a lot of people, we have to kind of figure out what they like and what makes them feel good. It'd help even if we had this at this point. And a lot of times, if they have them, our social workers are happy, because they can look and then they know the social worker knows what to do. The volunteers that come in with them will know, if they like to read Bible verses, or we'll know sometimes. Like, we knew this one lady who had done Broadway shows her whole life. And so we knew that, and we knew it from here. And so at the end, we got a bunch of the Broadway musicals, and we played that. And she didn't do much. She would smile. She enjoyed it so, and we would not have known, because she really didn't have any family that was left at that time. And so put down, what you like. And it could change, and you're allowed to change these and update. Some people do it annually. Some people, I did mine, put it in a drawer, and it's done, and I gave them out to people. But that's up to you. But it is good to know things. Yes, ma'am?
When you make those changes, does it have to be re-notarized?
It does, in the state of South Carolina. Every state does not do that. But in the state of South Carolina, these have to be witnessed by 2 people and notarized. So you can, and I was going to tell you that a little bit. I'll go ahead and tell you now. If you want, that's why Wendy came with me. Wendy is a notary. So if you want to get it witnessed and notarized now and then go in and fill it in later, you can. You don't have to, but she's here. I just always like her to come when I do this, because some people I don't want you to take it home and never get it notarized. So that's why I bring her and say, she can notarize your signature. You can grab 2 witnesses and that are here that won't profit from anything, and they can notarize and you can fill it in later. I hate to take that chance, because sometimes you don't always have access to a notary. And there may be one at Rollins Green. Do you know if there is, Jen?
We have a notary at the front desk.
Okay, they have a notary at the front desk. Okay, that's good to know. All right. Now, wish 4 is about, I think, is about control. And this is my wish for how I want people to treat me. And I will say that there's not a lot of times that we get to have full control, and at this time you should have full control. And so you get to say, whatever you want. If you want pictures around you, if I want my dog up in my bed with me, he is going to come, and my dog is going to, I can promise you. I wouldn't have him anywhere else. And so whatever it is that if you want to, die at home, if you want to, wherever that may be, everyone is different. We've had people that, were in may have been in a community with a family. They want to go home. They want to go to their dog, wherever they want to go. So whatever your choices are, this is where you put it. You want to have your hand held and talked to. You want to have people sat by you praying. And we hope this is all a given, and I realize that sometimes that it is a given, but you don't want to risk that, and you don't want to have some people to say, well, maybe she didn't feel that, or maybe he didn't feel that religious. Let them know right here, because not everyone knows. We kind of assume a lot in our day-to-day lives that people will know, and they don't. And then wish 5. Wish 5 is what my wish for what I want my loved ones to know. You can cross out anything you want. This is where, and I'll pick on you men, but I think this is a really good one, especially for men, because you don't always get to say what you want to, because you all kind of grew up, protecting the family. I know at least mine did. My grandfather was a little bit gruff, whereas grandma might say what she thinks and tell me she loves me every day. He didn't. So this is sort of your chance to put it down, and I will promise you they will treasure reading it too. Even if they don't hear you say it, they will treasure reading it from you. So put that down there, those things that you want to say. You can also put here your choice, how you would like to be, buried or cremated or what have you. As I was talking about my two friends earlier, it made me and my husband have a conversation again. I'm in hospice, so people think that's all I do is have these conversations, but I really don't as much as you would think. It kind of made us start talking about it a little bit more, and just as you're driving down the car, and he's like, well, I don't want that, and I was like, no, this is serious, this is a conversation, this is not just saying it out loud. And so we kind of went into a little bit details about what we wanted and things like that, and it gave us a great opportunity to do that. And then you can put in here, the following person knows my funeral wishes. And then I really like this one. It says, my wish for my family and friends to look at my dying as a time of personal growth for everyone, including me. This will help me live a meaningful life in my final days. I think that's a wonderful thing. If you have the opportunity, not everyone does, but if you have the opportunity to express and to share and to get all this out, I think it's a wonderful gift. I really do. And on page 10, signing the 5 wishes form. And here's where you sign. You fill in your name right there. I blank ask that my families, my doctors, and other health care provider, my friends, and all others follow my wishes as communicated by my health care agent or as otherwise expressed in this form. And then you will sign that, address, phone number, and date. In the state of South Carolina, ever I check, I just wanted to call and make sure. You do have 2 witnesses, and it does have to be notarized here. Also, I checked over here. If you look on page 11, it mentions residents of institutions in California, Connecticut, and including South Carolina. And since I was coming here, that's where I talked to them. It says if you live in certain areas, institutions, things like that, in one of the states, you may have to follow special witnessing requirements for your 5 wishes. You do not in South Carolina. What it is I don't know why they put us in here, but the other states, after you do it, if you're already in a community, usually skilled, but if you're already in a community, a skilled or assisted living, the ombudsman has to come in and sign off on it, but they do not in South Carolina. So in South Carolina, you just have to have the 2 witnesses and the notary. Well, then after you do that, what do you do with it? You have to share it. It does not do you any good. It's like I said earlier, I put it in my drawer. What I said was I made copies and put it in my drawer. So you make your copies, you take it to your doctor, any family member that you think, obviously I believe you're a healthcare person, like I have my mom's, my husband has mine. Make sure they have a copy of it. Keep an original at home. Don't just put it in a safe deposit box. When a person passed, I think they go to the safe deposit box after it's kind of all settled down. So put it somewhere in your home, where the person would be able to have access to it that you feel is secure enough. Or you put your other stuff. Like, I put my son's birth certificate and our passports and all that in one place with this in a big plastic bag. That's just what I do. But make sure enough people have copies of it, and they will be very relieved. You can see down here, there's a wallet card right here. And if you put that in your wallet, if something happens and they go in your wallet, they'll see where it is and who your primary physician and that you do have this advance directive. So that is advance directive. Is there any questions? Yes, sir.
If I sum this up, if I do everything in here, I can throw away or whatever all the past wills, et cetera, and it solves that. I've got 11 pages.
This is just for your advance directives. If you have a will or something registered with an attorney, then you have to let that attorney know. You do, and because they would have to revoke that.
If you already have an advance directive, yes. This will supersede that because of the date of it as well as the fact it's notarized.
But let them know. Do let them know. So you don't want that tug of war there at the date on this will supersede it, but you need to let them know. And this is only for healthcare power of attorney. It's not your financial aid. It's not your financial power of attorney or who gets what kind of thing. It's just for healthcare.
Okay, and you will have you probably do have a healthcare advocate already. If you don't, you certainly should appoint one and let everybody know. What I've done in my family with all of this information, if I've not only had all these papers done, but each of my 3 children have copies of everything that we've done, and each of them knows what their role is going to be. And as Carolyn pointed out, you have to let your doctors over here at Rolling Green, we have medical records that they keep for us. My medical records are here and to indicate that I have this, and I think we all need to do that and make sure that everybody who could possibly be involved knows what you're doing. And I have a question for you. One of the questions is, you're giving us each one of these now, but everybody here has family members. Would they be able to take extra copies home to give to their family members?
Yes, I have some extra ones back there where Wendy is. So if you want some, go ahead. I brought a lot. And you can't make copies. I mean, you can make copies of a filled out one for people to have them, but you can't make like a copy of a blank one for people to use. So you can
Okay, I got some questions here.
Okay. You start, Wendy.
You said, here it says there's a do not resuscitate bracelet. Where do we get one of those? Can we just put it on someone's wrist and they wear it all the time? On the bottom of page 6, in case of emergency.
I've never seen a bracelet. I have to be honest with you. I've never seen a bracelet. I don't know if they have those in South Carolina.
That would be very...
It would be. It would be really good. Like I said, I've been in hospital a long time. I've never seen one single bracelet. So I don't know if that's here or not. It's a good idea, though. It is maybe a medical ID bracelet that says DNR on it. There might be one of those, but not just the DNR.
Where would you get the medical ID bracelet that says DNR?
I don't know, but if you will give Wendy your name and number, I will promise you I will find out and let you know. And I can find out anything. I am like that.
How do you know, excuse me, how do you know when to call hospice?
Okay, hospice. The hospice is when everyone has when you start declining. That's to be honest with you. And there's a whole list of what the requirements are and things like that. But this is the basic. When there's weight loss, without trying. When there's if you have a diagnosis, obviously, of something that is life threatening. If you have, say, cancer and you don't want any more treatment, anything like that. With dementia, it's usually when people cannot walk, they're incontinent, they can only say a few words. There's COPD, that's more of a breathing, that's more of a technical. We have to look at that a little bit more in depthly. But a lot of what you're looking at is they go in the emergency room a lot. If they have a lot of UTIs, honestly, a lot of UTIs are a real indicator that UTI is a urinary tract infection. Yes, ma'am. And when there's a lot of those happening, along with weight loss, you're kind of starting to meet the criteria. Now, people on hospice, we have to be on hospice 6 days, 6 hours, 6 months, 2 years. But it's technically, the doctor, if I were to ask your doctor, they would say, I think they have 6 months or less to live. Now, that being said, I believe that we're human and we don't necessarily know. So everyone's decline is different. But we will keep you on hospice as long as you are declining. And if not, then you would be discharged. And then you can be readmitted any time if something happens. Some people graduate from hospice.
And what is the charge for hospice?
There is no charge for hospice. There is never any charge for hospice. I can tell you that from Lutheran Hospice. For most hospices, it is covered 100% by Medicare. It is covered 100% by Medicaid. There are no co-pays or anything like that. And then from my hospice, we're a faith-based nonprofit hospice. We don't turn anyone down for hospice. So if it's a person that doesn't have Medicare or doesn't have Medicaid, we go to our foundation. We do not. If they qualify for hospice, we pay for it. We cover it.
Now, to qualify, do you have to have a doctor advise that you do that, or can you look into it yourself?
You can look into it yourself. Call the office. You can call me. You can call the social worker. We'll take care of that. We'll go to your doctor. If you haven't been to a doctor, we will get you to one. My medical director does go out and see people usually when they're with us. Yes, ma'am.
They do sell DNR bracelets on Amazon.
Oh, thank you. See, look at there. That's good to know. I'm glad to thank you.
My question is, if you have all these documents, they are notarized, but they're from another state, what happens here when you?
They are still good. What state is it?
Tucson, Arizona.
Arizona's good. As long as they're on this list on page 3, it doesn't matter what state you filled it out in. As long as that state accepted it when you did it, and the state that you're in when you pass takes it. So as long as both, so South Carolina's on here, Arizona's on here. Because these are the same all over the United States. The only thing different on the back, like we print our information, but the inside is the same everywhere. So, yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to know about hospice at home.
Yes, absolutely, and that's what most hospices now do go home, because that's kind of where everyone wants to be. So we go wherever you are, and most hospices do. You know, there's a lot of us. We all go wherever you are, be that a community such as Rolling Green, at home. There are, hospice houses. I do want to say, I want to take this time to tell everyone, there's a big misconception about hospice houses, because you can't just go in a hospice house and stay, forever, until a couple months or something. People do think that. That's not true anymore, because Medicare will not pay for it. So usually hospice house is for only if you have symptoms that are out of control, like we couldn't handle at home, or wherever it may be. So it really has to be something out of control, unless you're going there for respite. All hospices pay for respite. And what that means is, if you are at, you live independently, and your caregiver needs a bit of a break or some time off, then the hospice will pay for you to go and stay in a hospice house or in a community they have a contract with, or something like that.
Yeah, we also have availability to hospice here at Rolling Green, and we have a number of people have been on hospice through the years.
Oh yeah, we're I'll be honest, we're one of the preferred providers of Rolling Green. I very proudly say that. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, but we are. And we work very well and have for a long time here. We're very blessed. We are a faith-based nonprofit hospice as Rolling Green, and most all the communities that are nonprofit and faith-based in the upstate we work in. Yes, ma'am. Hey.
So when did this come? Do they still oversee the DHEC form that says with the symbol that only EMS will recognize?
That's the DNR.
Right.
That is the do not resuscitate. That is the order I was talking about.
Okay.
So that is for emergency professionals.
Right.
So you have to have that, and that has to be signed by your doctor.
Right. And
Like,
this is just your wishes.
these are just your wishes. But to not do the resuscitation, they have to have that. You do.
And I think before you walked in, Linda, she spoke a little bit about the fact,
You're fine. That's
that
okay.
you should have your DNR available where they can see it. Like she suggested, I think it's a good idea at the end of your bed.
Yes.
And
We put it in the living room
Yes.
yeah.
because it's not in the kitchen. We put them on the kitchen. We put them on the refrigerators that weren't seeing them.
Yeah.
So then we put them in the kitchen on the door.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. That's.
I'm not helping out that way.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Are there questions I can answer about the 5 wishes or hospice? Yes, ma'am.
Some lady at a meeting we had here before said that her husband was on hospice for 5 years.
It can happen.
Brother-in-law was almost
Yeah. It can happen. It's not as much as it used to be. Medicare is pretty, they're pretty tight on it now, I have to be honest with you. But everyone declines at a different rate. I mean, we've had people that, as long as they're declining, then we can keep them on hospice. It all boils down to those Medicare guidelines.
I think at least in Pennsylvania, where my brother-in-law was, he had to be certified like every 6 months, but
Yes.
he had dementia along with Parkinson's, and he had his ups and downs, but he was over 2 years.
Yeah, and it definitely, we have one else broken
It's
off.
worth it for every time that he was good.
Yeah.
And we've had some people graduate from hospice.
Yeah. Some will come
Remember
on.
Abe Burrows, the comedian? He was in hospice for over a year, and he got better that he didn't need hospice, which was amazing.
Yeah, it can definitely happen, especially when they get a lot of, sometimes we come in to get medications and things, it depends on the situation, but sometimes, it does. It's sort of a gift, and that is the way we look at it, when you get to do
We
that.
used it for my husband, and it was a wonderful thing, because it's not only there for you, but it's there for your family members. They'll come and talk to you. The social worker will talk to you. It's just a very satisfying experience.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions? One more.
Would it be useful to take it with us if we have a hospitalization, so that would the hospital honor what is written on here?
Yes, they will, absolutely. As long as it's 2 witnesses and it's notarized, they should. Whoever is your person that's speaking for you, in case you can't, they have to make sure that they're waving it around. They will to the best of their ability. Hospitals, what they can do and can't do as far as comfort is, varies. But I would definitely, I tell everyone, have a voice when you go to the hospital or whatever that it is. Everybody needs a voice. Yes, ma'am.
Does it cover your medicines?
It covers, hospice covers any medicine related to the diagnosis or a medicine for comfort. It does. We cover a lot, and all the supplies, like incontinence supplies, things like that. And we also cover any of your medical equipment that's needed. And you get a CNA that comes out usually 3 to 5 times a week, a social worker, and a nurse, and a chaplain.
CNA?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you do die,
certified nursing assistant. Yes, ma'am.
When you do die, they're there for you, and they help prepare your loved one for the next step, which we're going to talk about shortly.
Thank you.
Carol, thank you so much. And
yes,
I didn't know anything about hospice. I really went to the hospital to be checked over because I was tired of getting treatment so bad. And the doctor said the doctor predicted the next day exactly what Billy had, and they had hospice come right in and said they couldn't guarantee how long he would live.
I'm sorry.
The hospice just came in and talked to us.
Well, the next speaker, Brenda Atkinson, saved my sanity after my husband died 8 years ago. Even though he and I had made detailed plans and shared them with our children, even though I had a background in counseling people in their grief, I was struggling to regain my own personal life as I grieved for my husband. I reached out to Brenda, and in 2 meetings, she helped me get on the path that I was able to live again. It really was wonderful. Brenda is the continuing care coordinator from the McAfee Funeral Home. She's worked with them since 2008. She received her Master of Divinity from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary and is certified in thanatology by the Association of Deaf Education and Counseling. She's accompanied today by J. Pat Jane, CPC, and I don't know what that means. The McAfee Advanced Planning and Funeral Director since 2010. They will guide you through understanding the value, emotional and financial, of pre-planning and pre-paying for your first funeral services. Brenda, Dad.
Thank you, June. We appreciate the opportunity to come and just talk with you a little bit about a subject that most people don't like to talk about, and that's funerals, and what you could do to prepare for that. What I'm going to talk to you today about is more about why we gather to have a funeral. And because it goes along with our grief, and a lot of people do not understand that. But we have rituals for a lot of things. We have them for the marriage ceremony, christenings, graduations, ordinations, inaugurations, and when someone dies, we do a funeral or a memorial service for them. So, do you know what the historic purpose of funeral rituals were? Why funerals started way back from the beginning of time? They didn't have the equipment we have today, so it was to ensure that the dead were in fact dead. and to ensure that they stayed dead. Because, you know, many times people, you know, they go to sleep or get in a kind of a coma and they come out of it. And so, and it's also to help carry the family through what they're going through and dealing with. The funeral is an important piece of our grief. And we have a little brochure that says Why We Gather, written by a friend to our funeral home, Dr. Bill Hoy. And you may have said it yourself, or you may have heard it said, I don't want to have a funeral. I don't want my family going through all that. Well, I'm here to tell you they're going to go through all that whether you have a funeral or not. Because grief happens. And they are going to grieve whether you have a service, a funeral or memorial service or some kind of gathering. And what a funeral does for your family is it brings them together with a community. And they get gifts of condolences. People come in to tell them about things. Just for instance, when my mother retired, she was an administrative assistant for a textile plant here in Greenville. And she retired and didn't like it, and so she wanted to go back to work part-time. And so she went, my mother sewed. She loved to make, she made all my clothes growing up. So she went to work at Peace Goods, was a fabric shop many years ago. And it was supposed to be part-time, and within a month she was the assistant manager. But anyway, when she died, we had people that came through. She helped a lot of churches when they were doing pageants and Christmas and Easter and all those kind of things. And she would help them with the fabric and help them find patterns. We never knew that. And when she died, they showed up at my mother's funeral and at the visitation and told us things our mother had done. Same thing when my dad died. Things that he never came home and told us that he gave somebody $5 to eat lunch. He never told us. But those things are things we need to hear when someone dies and what our family members meant to the community. And whether you believe it or not, you're very important to a lot of people. And they need to come together and to grieve with your family. So that's why we you know, of course, well, that's our business, but we at Thomas McAfee, we believe in honoring people and remembering them. So there's several things that it can do. It can also reaffirm, after we remember, it can reaffirm our spiritual beliefs and our values. It can help us and shepherd us through the experience. And when our families who don't consider themselves religious, they often ask a member of the clergy to lead the service. Well, I will tell you that Thomas McAfee has celebrants. Have you ever heard of a funeral celebrant? Okay, that is a person who and I am one of those. I don't do many of them because of all the other stuff I'm involved in, but we do have another gentleman who is trained in that. And in this area, we get people who say, we don't want a religious service, so they call one of us, even though we're both ministers. And when I go to talk to them, I sit down with them and I said, I want you to tell me all about your loved one. And that's what I did when I was on church staff as well. And so they tell us all about them. And many times they've told the funeral director, we don't want a religious service. But here in South Carolina, I go sit down with them and I'll say, well, do you have a poem or something you'd like for me to read? And they'll say, Psalms 23. And I'm sitting there going, I think that's in the Bible. and then I'll say, do you have a song you'd like for, what kind of music? Amazing Grace. And I'm like, okay, I'm totally confused now. And then they say, what we want is somebody to talk about our loved one. We don't want a preacher preaching. We want them to talk about our loved one. And so this is more prevalent up north and out west and in the Midwest than it is in the South, but it's coming. because we've already had several at Thomas McAfee. So that's why we're getting prepared for it. So if you want to have a service and you don't want it religious, or if you are spiritual and your family member was spiritual, but you want to talk about them, you can do, they can help you with that. And even the funeral directors will help you figure out how to do that. We had a lady who had 4 brothers, and she was the only girl, and she was perpetually late. And when she died, unfortunately, with cancer, and so her brothers, when they came, they said to our funeral director, she was late for everything. If we had lunch at 6, we told her 4, so she'd be there by 6. Well, they said, we want to do something about that. And the funeral director said, well, if we just show up late with her, they'll think the funeral home didn't have their act together. He said, let me talk to the pastor, because it was in her church. So what they came up with was the pastor just started the funeral, and she wasn't present. And everybody was kind of looking around, and all of a sudden on the back door you heard this knocking. And the pastor stopped and said, yes. And the funeral director said, I am so sorry, but she just got here. And everybody erupted, and the brothers loved it. So funerals you can have laughter there as well. And that's, and that's a celebration. I had a friend of mine whose sister died, and I went to the service, and he did our grief seminar a couple of weeks ago, and he started the service by saying, we are gathered here today because Norma died, but we're also gathered here today because Norma lived, and we want to talk about her life-a-weary. And so that's what he called it. He talked about her life. So that's why we want to have these funerals, and we want people to be memorialized, because it can reaffirm what you believe. Also, it helps you realize, we live in a world that's, people just deny death and the reality of it. But one of the things of getting into your grief and helping you move forward is facing the reality of that this person is gone. And you know what happens at the funeral home? They come in and they'll say, well, the funeral director will talk to them, and they'll say, well, mother likes, and then they go, she liked. So you see, they're beginning to face that reality of that their mother's no longer with them, and it takes a while for that. It's not something you get into, and so planning, looking at pictures for the videos, doing all that is a part of the grief process of getting you on through, so you can go through your grief. You can't go around it. You have to go through it, and you have to let it come. I had a session this morning with a lady, and same sort of thing. She felt guilty because the night before her husband died, the doctor talked to him, and the husband said, I want to change it to do not resuscitate. And he died the next morning. Well, she's playing that what if. What if we hadn't have done that? What if we hadn't have done this? What if we... And I said to her, you have to befriend your grief. You have to let it become your friend right now, and you have to deal with it. You can't play this what if game, because, we can play wish, shoulda, coulda all day long, but it's not going to change some situations. And I finally said to her, your husband made that decision. He gave you a gift. He made that decision. And she said, oh. And she said, but why am I still... And one of the things I want you to know about all this is, we make decisions on what we know at the time. So we say, I tell people, just say, I did the best I knew how to do at the time with the information I had. And if we'll tell ourselves that and reinforce that, then it helps us get through the grief. And then also, before we can say a wonderful hello, we need to say a good goodbye. And that's what funerals are for. It's for us. And people of faith, and Dr. Thomas Long says this, people of faith, it is our privilege to walk our brothers and sisters in our faith all the way home. And that's where either we go to the cemetery with them or we're there for the service, for the memorial service, and we present them back to their God. And there's a lot of, we deal with all faiths at Thomas McAfee. We've had Hindu services, we've had Buddhists, we've had Muslims, we've had Vietnamese Catholics that are totally different from American Catholics and their rituals. And we deal, Catholics, some of you probably are, that depends on the priest and what they will allow at their church. So we deal with all that. And our funeral directors help with that. But what Chad does is he helps you plan your service before you need it. And that is such a gift to your family, because when you come in and decide what you want, and you write it down, and it's in a folder that he has, and we keep it on file, then your family comes in, the director gets that, and right there it is. Now, let me caution you on one thing. I don't know if Chad would say this, but I'll say it to you. When you come, you can come to the funeral home and put down all your wishes, but you don't have to pay for anything. But be careful what you tell your family when you go home. They say, I went to the funeral home and everything's taken care of. Now, what does that mean to your children? You paid for it, right? And then, when the funeral director says, well, how do y'all plan on taking care of this? And they go, oh, we thought Mama said she did that. No, she just told us what she wanted. And so they get a big surprise. So just be careful and have that talk of a lifetime. This is what we're dealing with, and Chad's going to talk a little bit more about that. There's things that you can ask your family and talk about. Furman University is bringing out their family living class twice a year. Have 2 classes coming in the fall and 2 in the spring, and we talk to them about what they need to know for a death certificate. Now these are 19, 20, 21-year-olds. The last place they thought they was going to be when we went to Furman University was in a funeral home on a Friday afternoon. But the professor told me, Dr. DeYoung, she said, on Monday after they've been there, they all come in and said, we called our family and said, our parents and said, you need to write this stuff down. We didn't know we had to know this, this, and this, and this. Have you got that somewhere? And she said, even though you think they're not listening, they are. And it's such a gift that you give your family. So Chad, why don't you come and tell them how they can do that? Thank y'all.
All right, thanks Brenda, and thanks Jen for having us back again. So thank you so much. It's our pleasure to be here today. Brenda mentioned a little bit to you about the Talk of a Lifetime. What the Talk of a Lifetime is, and those of you that have the blue folder from the funeral home, I think everybody should have that. There's lots of information in there that you'll find hopefully helpful to you at some point wherever you are in your process. But the Funeral and Memorial Information Council, which is associated with the National Funeral Directors Association, which is where we get a lot of our statistical data, things of that nature, throughout different types of surveys and things that they do. By the way, CPC is just a fancy name for Certified Pre-Planning Consultant. That's all that is. In South Carolina, it's another designation that you can get when you're dealing with pre-planning. So that's all it is, just another fancy name. But the brochure that's in there that talks about the Talk of a Lifetime, about, I think it was 2012, FAMIC came out, Funeral Memorial Information Council came out with this brochure to get people talking about the talk. And some people think, well, I had that a long time ago. I had that talk a long... No, we're not talking about that talk, okay? So this is all about the talk that you need to have, such as what Brenda just mentioned, that many things about you sometimes are shoved back in our memory, and we're not always able to bring those out when a death has occurred, such as there's a list in your folder that talks about just a typical questionnaire that you will have to answer when you walk into a funeral home. and those things that Brenda was talking about, your mother's maiden name. Some of the children have no idea what grandma's maiden name was. They didn't talk about it. So there's things that you need, information that's needed. That brochure will help you ease the tension in talking about some of the things that need to be discussed about your life. Brenda's already made it very clear that we plan for all different types of scenarios in our life, but the one thing we fail to talk about is the inevitable. Every one of us in this building is going to die, and it's something that's going to take place. So it's beneficial to go ahead and get some things together as to what needs to happen when I do die. Now, I'm going to talk about a few things in relation to pre-planning, and then we're going to open up for question and answers. Hopefully we'll be able to give you some answers for any questions you have. As Brenda alluded, it costs you nothing to call a funeral provider and say, could I set some time aside with one of your funeral directors to come in and get some thoughts and ideas and just get some things on paper, so that when something happens, just as with the 5 wishes, which is a great tool for you, that when something happens, it's all on file. As a funeral director, we pull that file and we go over it with your next of kin, and there's virtually no questions that we are stuck trying to answer because you've already answered them. We go through the process of what do you want for your funeral or memorial service? Do you want cremation versus traditional burial? If you want cremation, does that mean you want to have a service and a time of gathering your friends and family? Because there's a misconstrued idea out there that when a family wants cremation, you die, the funeral home comes for you, nobody ever sees you again, and that's it. That can happen. I don't recommend it, but there are different services that are offered for even cremation families. From the body actually being present, embalmed, just as a traditional funeral service, to, Chad, I don't think we need any of that, but let's have some flowers, let's have some personal reflections, some mementos, things that were important to our loved one. Let's have those present, but we don't need the body. So there's lots of different scenarios that are out there. And for about the past 10 years, funerals are becoming more and more personalized. We get so many requests now of things that, can you do this? Is this acceptable? Can we? Unless we're in someone's church or house of worship, there's not too much we won't do for you at your funeral, especially at the funeral home. There's some taboo things that we probably wouldn't do in churches or houses of worship or synagogues, but at the funeral home, we do it all. So anyway, whatever you want to have there. But it's just a time that you just come and talk to the funeral director. There's no pressure. There's no emotion put into it per se. You haven't experienced a death. It's more lighthearted. We talk. I laugh a lot with my clients that I deal with, versus when I was on the other side where there wasn't a lot of laughter when I was dealing with death when it had occurred. So there's all different things that we can do when you actually come into the funeral home. Now, we of course want you to call us, but there are lots of great funeral providers out there. We just encourage you to find the one that you want to utilize and make an appointment and go in and do this. Okay. So the next step to pre-planning, there's 2 steps involved. You can come in, let's select everything, let's have it on file, and do absolutely nothing about it from the financial standpoint. The flip side of that is actually going ahead and funding your arrangements. The funeral industry, and I've been a funeral director for 15 years, the funeral industry is the only industry that I'm aware of that you can go in and select services and merchandise and pay for them today at today's prices and not use them until many years down the road. I mean, wouldn't that be great if we could go buy a 2020 Cadillac at 2017 prices? I'm not aware of anything else that you can do that in. And those prices, at the time the contract is written, they are locked in and they are guaranteed. You will have some incidentals when the funeral does occur. That's, you know, we always tell you that. You're going to have things like obituary notices, death certificates. If you want to pay a clergy honorarium, if there's an organist, if there's a pianist, if somebody sings, there's going to be some incidentals of that that's not taken care of. But your services and merchandise, anything the funeral home offers in regards to service or merchandise can be locked in or guaranteed. Okay? We get the question all the time, well, Chad, do I have to pay for all that up front? No, you don't. Our funeral home uses an insurance company to guard or hold your funds until the death occurs. That funeral home, or that insurance company also has the ability to work with you on different terms. If that's an option, you can set up monthly payments, monthly drafts, things like that until it's actually paid for. So there's different scenarios that's out there. In your blue folder, you're going to get the latest statistics, which is, they're always about 3 years old. But from NFDA, in your PowerPoint presentation that's in your folder, you're going to get some statistical data about pricing. And I'll tell you this, funeral home pricing varies from firm to firm. Okay? The Federal Trade Commission governs us as funeral directors that we must present you a general price list. You must know what our prices are, but they may be totally different elsewhere with the XYZ firm down the street. Okay? They don't govern what we can charge. So it's gonna fluctuate. I'll throw this out here and then we'll take some questions. NFDA says that an adult funeral in 2014 with services and a casket was around $7,000. That's without an outer burial container, which is something that most perpetual care cemeteries like your Woodlawns or your Hillcrest, your Graceland East, your Graceland West are perpetual care cemeteries, just meaning that they're going to keep it maintained throughout the years. They're going to require you to have an outer burial container, which means the casket goes inside of that container so that the grave doesn't sink over time. If you add that cost to it, then you're around the $8,000 mark. Okay? Same thing with cremation. It's going to vary from firm to firm, but an average cremation with a viewing and a service is around $6,000. So, and again, that varies from firm to firm, and it varies really based on your tastes. What do you want as far as merchandise or things are concerned? At this time, we'll say this. We get the question I do a lot from veterans, anybody that was in the military. They want to know, well, what does the Veterans Administration have for me? It's going to vary depending on your service, and also if your death has anything to do with service relation there at all. But what we would do is we would file a Veterans Administration claim form, and then in about 3 to 6 weeks, the government will send the next of kin a letter stating to them, after reviewing this claim, this is the amount that we're willing to pay for the burial allowance. We have nothing to do with that, okay? But there are some things that are available to veterans. There are some burial allowances that are available, okay? Any questions at this point?
If you're a veteran, do you have to be buried in a veteran cemetery?
Absolutely not. You can be buried wherever you want to, but when I am talking to veterans, my reply to them is usually, why would you not? Because when you are eligible for that, you're deserving of that. If you go outside of being buried from there, you're going to spend another $4,000 to $6,000 at a cemetery for the plot, the opening and closing, the marker. When you go to a veterans administered cemetery, you're paying nothing. It's a no-brainer.
Question? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. My wife died. She was a second lieutenant when I married her, and so she had some military service.
Sure.
And the funeral home after cremation, it took a year to get the headstone, but we got it.
Great.
And then we picked it up by hand. My partner and I got it, and we took it to a cemetery in California where I live, and we dug our own grave. little hole 2 feet deep, and we put a little box in, and we had the family together, and we put the stone in, and a year later, when it arrived, and that was the whole ceremony. I mean, that was what it took place. So, I mean, you can make it as simple as that, I suppose. Now, I have a plot in California, and I intend to be cremated and have my kids, 6 of them, take my ashes back there and inter them. Is that possible here? I mean, where would that fit in with what you're talking about?
Well, if you chose to have that here versus California, I will tell you this: most of the cemeteries around here are not going to allow you to go in and dig your own hole.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go to California.
Yeah, so I think, if they're on, that's a great thing, because the Veterans Administration does, again, you're talking about the government, so that's why it took so long.
We just got the
stone. So you get the
stone,
but most of your perpetual care cemeteries are also going to require you to put that stone down on a granite base, because they're, of course, you get the VA marker absolutely at no charge, but the cemetery is going to want to make some money on it, so they require you to put it on a granite base around here. So,
would you be a little more specific about the prepay?
Yes.
Like we have a prepay, and we know it's through an insurance company. I don't remember. Did we have to pay something to the insurance company up front, or how did that work?
Okay, so when you come in to fund your funeral, cremation, whatever you choose from us, your funds are paid to, I think maybe we were dealing with another insurance company but we're now been using for the last, I think, 6 years, National Guardian Life in Madison, Wisconsin. So the funds are never placed into any Thomas McAfee accounts, which is to your advantage. Because if, for whatever reason, Thomas McAfee were to ever go belly up, then your funds would go belly up with us. Okay, so that's one of the reasons we use an insurance company. Those funds are secured. We can't touch them until we produce a death certificate with that company. Okay, so we never have your funds in our possession. That is how we're able to lock in or guarantee the prices, because over time National Guardian Life is going to put your funds in different areas and make money, hopefully, with your money, which is how we're able to offset the prices there.
So we would have talked first about what we want.
Yes.
Decide on a fee.
Select it.
And then
price.
Go to the insurer. You go to the insurance company.
We do that as a pre-planning funeral director. I have a limited lines of insurance licensure that all I can write in the insurance industry is that pre-need policy with that company. Okay, so it is written. We have the forms. You write the check to the company. We take care of the processing, and then they send you the policy once it's done.
Good. I didn't remember how we did that.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
We had a cremation policy in Florida.
Right.
23 years ago, and then we came up here and they sent a letter with us. And we went to a funeral home and gave it to them, and they said, just you're set up. They told us what we had to do, and you're set up. And we paid extra for urns, and we told them we was going to take them back to Tennessee and put them in our family plot. And no problem.
No problems, because another reason we use an insurance product is because it's fully transferable and portable. So if you do this here, but then move with your son in Washington State later on, then you transfer that policy to another funeral home in that state. Now, the only issue with that is just like what you said. You're only locked in or guaranteed at the funeral home provider that you started this with. So if you move this to another provider, that provider can charge you more, or they can charge you less, whatever their prices are.
And the great advantage of doing that, in my opinion, is with all the other things your children have to deal with at the time that you pass away, they don't have to worry about paying the funeral charges. It's all taken care of. It's a wonderful feeling. It's a gift.
And you take care of newspaper costs. I mean, it's all, excuse me. Do you take care of newspaper costs? Can you give us some idea of cost in the various papers? And also, how many death certificates does the average person need to complete all the things they need to complete?
Okay, great questions. The death certificate issue is going to be dependent on how much your next of kin is going to have to take care of things that's still in your name. Okay, so if you have multiple IRAs and mutual funds and insurance policies, and you've got money at this bank and money at that bank, you're going to need certified copies for each of those transactions that needs to take place, to take your name off, put somebody else's on, or for them to completely close that account. So those are through Vital Records in South Carolina. They're 12 for the first copy and 3 for each additional copy. Traditionally, most people will get between 8 to 10 at least. Now, you can have more, and it's going to depend on what you've got sitting out there. But most people are going to go with 8 to 10. Your obituary costs are going to be dependent upon the newspapers. In Greenville News, you know, just to be honest with you, they've been and have been losing subscriptions, just as most other newspapers are now because of the internet and technology now. So they are trying to recoup fees with obituaries, and most obituaries in most papers are charged at a classified ad rate. So a standard obituary in the Greenville News, I tell our clients all the time, not counting all your accolades, all the great things you've done, the wonderful cook you are, just saying your name, your date, you were born, here's the funeral, you're going to start about $300 just for that. And then it's going to go from there. They charge per line, $6 per line, and you know what a line consists of, about 4 words. So those obituaries where you're reading and it looks like a book, people have shelled out the money for it.
Sir, I'm originally from Anderson.
Yes.
And Anderson used to send the obituaries here to the Greenville News. We used to see them every day. They no longer do it. Do you have any idea why they aren't in there?
I'm not really. You're talking about the obituaries, or the name would be at the top of the actual obituary? I can't 100% say, but I could almost guess, and we're seeing it more and more in our funeral home, is that people will say, Chad, can you put the long version of our obituary on your website and then put the short version in the paper, because it's going to save us money? And the answer is yes. We charge nothing to put it on our website.
Good idea, yeah.
I belong to Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
And as a Catholic, I wish to be cremated. How do you handle something like that with your service?
Well, obviously the Thomas McAfee Funeral Home, the McAfee family are Catholic, so all of our funeral directors at our firm are very familiar with what Catholic protocol calls for. And of course, with the Catholic Church, cremation is now acceptable in the Catholic Church. They still would like for the body to be present even with cremation, but the cremated remains in an urn are okay now to be in the church for a mass. So either or must be present in order to have a mass.
Right.
Okay. So we call the church. We get the time for mass. All this straightened out. We're the ones that takes care of all that for you, and we go to St. Mary Magdalene quite often. So.
And you did mention you also work with people of the Jewish religion.
Yes. Yes.